Welcome to 101 Facts About the U.S. Economy. Whether you're a money nerd or just someone curious about how the world's biggest economy works, you're in the right place. The first fact: U.S. paper currency isn't made of paper at all. It's a blend of cotton and linen. So technically, every time you crumple a dollar, you're wrinkling a really tiny towel. 2. The U.S. has the world's largest economy, with a nominal GDP of over $27 trillion in 2023. 3. And for some context, if the U.S. economy were its own planet, it would be the biggest in our solar system. Well, if planets measured wealth, that is. 4. California alone, if it were a country, would rank as the 5th largest economy in the world, right behind Germany. 5. Speaking of states, Texas has a GDP larger than Canada. Who knew cowboy hats could generate so much revenue? 6. The US dollar is the world's most widely used currency for international trade and reserves. Over 60% of all global reserves are held in US dollars. 7. The Federal Reserve, aka the Fed, controls the US money supply, interest rates, and inflation. Think of it as the ultimate money DJ, spinning tracks like inflation reduction and interest rate hike. 8. Inflation. The U.S. inflation rate reached 9.1% in 2022, the highest in over 40 years. You might remember it as the year when grocery shopping felt like buying luxury goods. And speaking of prices, the most expensive city in the U.S. to live in is New York. Yep, where a small apartment can cost you more than some people's dream homes. 10. But New York doesn't hold the record for the highest median home price. That title goes to San Francisco, where a fixer-upper will cost you around $1.6 million. But hey, you get a great view of fog, right? Guys, don't forget to subscribe. 11. The largest employer in the U.S. is the federal government, with over 2.8 million employees. So if you've ever felt like the government is everywhere, you're kind of right. 12. Walmart is the largest private employer, with over 1.6 million employees. That's roughly the population of Philadelphia, but with more rollback prices. 13. The tech sector accounts for nearly 10% of the U.S. economy. So every time you're scrolling through memes, remember, you're keeping the economy alive. 14. Apple, Microsoft, and Alphabet, Google's parent company, are the 3 most valuable U.S. companies. Combined, they're worth more than the entire economy of the UK. 15. U.S. households have a total combined net worth of $155 trillion. That's a lot of zeros. Even Jeff Bezos does a double take at that number. 16. Speaking of Bezos, in 2021, Amazon became the first company to deliver over 1 billion packages in the U.S. in a single year. That's enough boxes to stretch from Earth to the Moon 28 times. 17. The U.S. has over 30 million small businesses. They make up 99.9% of all U.S. businesses. That means almost every store you walk into is technically a small business, even if it feels like they charge big prices. 18. In 2024, the national minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, where it's been since 2009. Someone should probably give that wage a little inflation update, don't you think? 19. The U.S. national debt is over $35 trillion. That's about $100,000 per citizen. And you thought your student loans were bad? 20. The richest 1% of Americans own about 38% of the nation's wealth. That's like if 1% of a pizza party took 38 slices. 21. Meanwhile, 40% of Americans don't have enough savings to cover a $400 emergency. Yep, even a busted tire can cause financial panic. 22. The average American eats about 2,500 calories a day, so that's like burning through $400 of economic value daily. In cheeseburgers. 23. The U.S. imports over $3.8 trillion worth of goods each year, with the top import being, surprise, electronics. Because, of course, we all need more screens in our lives. 24. The country's biggest trading partner, it's China, followed by Canada and Mexico. We're all about those cross-border friendships, at least when it comes to cash. 25. Now, when it comes to exporting, the US sends out around $3 trillion worth of goods. Our biggest export? Airplanes. Yep, we're flying high in international trade. Literally. 26. Agriculture still plays a big role in the economy. The US is the world's largest producer of corn, soybeans, and beef. So next time you eat a burger, think of it as a patriotic act. 27. And if you thought tech was the big moneymaker, surprise! Agriculture alone adds nearly $1.4 trillion to the US economy. 28th. US healthcare spending hit $4.3 trillion in 2021. That's roughly $12,900 per person, or the cost of your entire life savings if you break an arm. 29. On the flip side, the pharmaceutical industry in the US is worth over $1 trillion. That's a lot of Advil for all those headaches the economy gives us. 30. Here's a wild one. Did you know that Americans throw away about 40% of their food? That's over $160 billion in food waste annually. Imagine throwing a $100 bill into the trash 1.6 billion times. 31. The entertainment industry contributes $717 billion to the US economy. So, next time you're binge-watching Netflix, you can tell yourself you're supporting the economy. 32. The US defense budget in 2024 was $883 billion. That's more than the next 10 countries combined. They're not kidding when they say America likes to go big or go home. We're only getting started. Which fact surprised you the most so far? Drop a comment below. Now, let's keep this economic roller coaster going. 33. The average American worker produces over $130,000 worth of goods and services per year. That's like cranking out a luxury car in economic value. 34. The US unemployment rate hit an all-time high of 24.9% during the Great Depression. Today's average is around 3 to 4%, which isn't perfect, but hey, it's a lot better than 1 in 4. 35. Now, let's talk taxes. The IRS collects over $4 trillion in taxes each year. That's enough to build a road to Mars, if NASA's budget were slightly bigger. 36. The US corporate tax rate was reduced from 35% to 21% after the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This was the lowest rate since 1939. Companies may have saved billions, but some folks still felt like their wallet stayed the same size. 37. The wealthiest individual in the US is Elon Musk, with a net worth that fluctuates between $200 and $250 billion. That's more than the GDP of entire countries like Greece or Portugal. 38. More than 55% of Americans own stocks, either directly or through retirement accounts like 401ks. So, if you have a 401k, you're technically a mini investor on Wall Street. 39. Social Security accounts for 24% of the federal budget, making it the largest single expenditure. That's right, keeping grandma and grandpa taken care of costs big bucks. 40. The United States is the second largest energy consumer in the world, using more than 97 quadrillion British thermal units annually. That's like leaving a hairdryer on for 3.1 billion years. 41. The US economy accounts for nearly 26% of the world's total economic output. So, the next time someone calls America big, they're really not exaggerating. 42. Believe it or not, Alaska is the state with the highest rate of job vacancies, largely due to its remote location. Who's up for working with a view of glaciers? 43rd. US credit card debt reached over $1 trillion in 2023. That's a lot of impulse purchases. Maybe too many late-night Amazon shopping sprees? 44. On average, an American has 4 credit cards. So if you're struggling to keep track of yours, don't worry. You're not alone. 45. As of 2024, the average American household owed around $92,727 in total debt. Between mortgages, car payments, student loans, and credit cards, that number adds up fast. 46. The US stock market is the largest in the world, with a total market capitalization of over $40 trillion. To put that into perspective, it's more than half of the world's entire stock market value. 47. The US is home to the largest number of billionaires globally, 813 of them in 2024. That's more than China, India, and Germany combined. 48. The top 3 wealthiest cities in the US, based on median household income, are San Jose, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. So it turns out tech and politics pay off. 49. The U.S. transportation industry is massive, generating over $1.5 trillion a year, and yet the average American still spends 54 hours a year stuck in traffic. That's more time than some of us spend on vacation. 50. The first billion-dollar company in the U.S. was U.S. Steel, which hit the milestone in 1901. Fast forward to today, and we have companies worth trillions. 51. The average monthly car payment in the U.S. is around $734 for new cars in 2024. That's almost like renting a small apartment, but with way more horsepower. 52. The U.S. is home to 3.5 million truck drivers, making it one of the largest employment sectors in the country. These drivers haul more than 10 billion tons of freight each year. 53. Over 22 million Americans work for federal, state, and local governments. That's more than the populations of most countries. 54. The largest pension fund in the U.S. is the California Public Employees Retirement System, CalPERS, with assets of over $470 billion. That's enough money to retire a small nation. 55th. U.S. companies spent $130 billion on digital advertising in 2023. So, every time you see an ad pop up online, yeah, that costs someone a pretty penny. 56. The United States is the largest producer of natural gas in the world. So, if you're keeping your home warm this winter, thank the economy. And fracking. 57. U.S. tourism generates over $1.1 trillion annually, with popular destinations like New York, Las Vegas, and Orlando leading the way. That's a lot of Mickey Mouse ears and Broadway tickets. 58. The average retirement age in the U.S. is 62. So, if you're hoping to retire early, you might want to start saving now. 59. Agriculture exports account for $196 billion annually in the U.S. economy, with soybeans, corn, and wheat leading the pack. That's a lot of grain heading across the globe. 60. Over 50% of U.S. adults have life insurance. It's one of those things we don't talk about much, but it's worth trillions of dollars in coverage. 61. The U.S. housing market is worth over $43 trillion. That's more than the combined economies of Japan, Germany, and India. 62. In 2023, the median household income in the U.S. was around $74,580. That may sound pretty decent, but let's not forget the cost of living keeps rising. 63. The top 1% of Americans earn over 20% of all income in the country. Yep, that's some serious income inequality, but you probably guessed that already. 64. The U.S. is the world's largest oil producer, pumping out about 18 million barrels a day. It's no wonder gas prices fluctuate so much, they have a big impact on the economy. 65. The average U.S. household spends about $5,600 a year on groceries. That's a lot of trips to the store, and let's be real, probably too much money on snacks. 66. The U.S. produces over 85% of its own food, meaning it's relatively self-sufficient in feeding its population. Though we do rely on imports for certain luxuries, like coffee and chocolate. 67. The tech sector pays some of the highest wages in the U.S., with average annual salaries often exceeding $100,000. Time to brush up on those coding skills, right? 68. The United States has over 4,000 airports, more than any other country in the world. So, the next time you miss a flight, just remember, there's always another one. Somewhere. 69. The average American worker puts in 1,791 hours per year. Compare that to countries like Germany, where the average is closer to 1,350 hours. Time to petition for longer vacations, anyone? 70. The U.S. is home to the world's largest stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, NYSE. It's so big that over $20 billion worth of shares are traded there every day. 71. The US has the world's highest healthcare spending per capita. Americans spend more on healthcare than any other country, with costs rising every year. 72. Despite being a major economic power, the US ranks only 14th in global broadband internet speeds. So, if your internet is slow, you're not alone. 73. The American auto industry is a massive $545 billion sector, but interestingly, electric cars make up only about 6% of new car sales as of 2023. 74. The average price of a college education in the US has tripled since the 1980s. With student loan debt hitting over $1.7 trillion, you could say education comes with a hefty price tag. 75. Americans spend about $70 billion annually on soda. That's a lot of fizzy economics. 76. The US spends more on its military than the next 10 countries combined. At $842 billion in 2023, that's about $2,300 per person in the country. 77. America is the world's biggest market for smartphones, with over 290 million active users. That's almost 90% of the population. Guess we're all addicted to those tiny screens. 78. The US Space Force, yes, that's a real thing, has a budget of over $26 billion. Space is officially the next economic frontier. Bring on the asteroid mining. 79. The federal government owns roughly 28% of all US land. Most of that is in the western states, with Nevada being the top landowner. Nearly 85% of the state is federally owned. 80. The U.S. Postal Service handles over 425 million mail pieces every single day. That's about 5,000 pieces of mail every second. Imagine the amount of spam that includes. 81. Over 70% of U.S. adults have a credit score above 650, considered a good score. But we all know that the real challenge is resisting those new credit card offers. 82. The U.S. has the largest number of universities in the world, with over 5,300 higher education institutions. More schools, more student loans. It's the American way. 83. The U.S. Department of Defense is the largest single consumer of oil in the world, using roughly 100 million barrels of oil each year. That's enough to fill 6,400 Olympic-sized swimming pools. 84. The average cost of daycare in the U.S. is about $10,000 per year. That's like paying college tuition, but for a toddler. 85. The U.S. is home to more than 30,000 museums, contributing over $50 billion annually to the economy. Next time you're visiting a museum, you can tell yourself it's patriotic and educational. 86. The U.S. Mint produces about 30 million coins every day. That's a lot of pennies to pick up for good luck. 87. Over 38 million Americans live below the poverty line, which is about 11.5% of the population. Economic growth doesn't always mean everyone gets a piece of the pie. 88. The U.S. is the world's second largest producer of oil, right after Saudi Arabia. Most of that oil comes from Texas, Alaska, and North Dakota. Yes, North Dakota has more than just cold winters. 89. The U.S. recycling industry generates $110 billion annually, employing over 164,000 people. So, the next time you toss that plastic bottle in the right bin, think of it as an economic contribution. 90. America is also the world's largest coffee importer, with over 3.3 billion pounds consumed every year. No wonder we're always so caffeinated. 91. The largest source of household wealth in the U.S. is real estate, making up about 35% of total assets. In other words, owning property equals big bucks. 92. In 2023, the U.S. generated over 40% of its electricity from renewable sources like wind, solar, and hydropower. Clean energy is making strides, but there's still a long way to go. 93. The U.S. food industry is massive, valued at over $1.8 trillion. That's a lot of burgers, fries, and pizzas being served every day. 94. Over 65% of U.S. households own their homes, while the rest rent. Home ownership is a hallmark of the American dream. But as prices rise, renting is becoming more common. Speaking of home prices, in 2023, The average cost of a home in the US was around $400,000. Compare that to 1980, when the average was only $47,000. 96. The US has the world's largest prison population with over 2 million people behind bars. The prison industrial complex? Yep, it's an economic factor too. 97. Americans spend about $240 billion on pets each year. Turns out, man's best friend, or cat, or parrot, is also a very expensive friend. 98. Over 50% of US workers don't use all their vacation days. If that's you, what are you waiting for? You earned that break. 99. The US dollar has been the world's dominant currency for over 75 years, and about 90% of global currency transactions involve the US dollar in some way. 100. Americans spend more than $70 billion on lotteries annually. Statistically speaking, you're more likely to get struck by lightning than to win the jackpot. But hey, a dollar and a dream. 101. And here's the grand finale. The US economy is so large that if it were its own country in the 1800s, it would still have been the world's biggest economy back then. That's right. Even in the 19th century, the American economy would have dwarfed others. And that's a wrap on 101 facts about the US economy. Which fact surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more fascinating facts. See you in the next one.